I'm back. I found the wretched hole punch. Don't you hate it when you put stuff away where it belongs and then you can't find it? Okay, so I cut these by hand. I'll do a little bit later on. I'll pull out my strap cutter and I'll show you how I cut straps. And for these double ones, I haven't really made any sort of jig. What I do is I have old straps that I took off kilts because this leather could be, oh God, it could, this one is clearly brown leather, which has been darkened with shoe polish, with blacking. And that could date back to the First World War era, the Great War era, because that's how soldiers would blacken their brown boots and their brown straps. So that could be as old as that. This is a more recent one, but there's been changes in leather tanning, and I rather like the new leather. So so the first thing I'm going to do is I'd marked. This is a bit off kilter on the end, but it doesn't matter because I was absolutely determined to avoid any waste when I was cutting this strap, because this is going to be buried in the seams. The fact that this is sort of a trapezoid doesn't really matter. But having marked the edge of the canvas like so, I think maybe it won't be until the next fitting that we will be able to tell if the customer has any asymmetry. Because again, quite frequently, surprisingly frequently, you'll find a fellow's one hip is slightly higher than than the other. Okay. Yeah, so I just lay this and I adjust it to the proper size. And I just use the old holes as a guide. And I'll try to do a point of view version of this if I can get my videographer to find enough free time that he can actually have the camera over my shoulder. Because typically historically these straps were always about, how long were they? 4.5 inches. And this one is just a little more, 4 3/4. Not terribly long, and generally they'd have 3 positions, but I make my straps a hair longer. So I'm just gonna line up, I cut the 3 holes. I'm just lining up, come on, where are you? There you are. So I can cut a 4th position, or punch a 4th position, I suppose. There we are. Like so. It's not machine perfect, but whatever, it's handmade. Okay. I'm going to cheat a tiny bit, and I'm going to use this strap that I've already cut. And get this out the way. Okay. And I'm using linen thread. Where'd my needle go? Where did my wax go? Huh. Maybe it is getting near dinner time. Well waxed linen thread. And I bought this, I can't remember the gauge, the number size of the thread. I can never keep that in my memory. But I bought it from a supplier for bookbinders, people who hand make books, sewing the pages together. You're not going to be difficult, are you? Oh, there you go. Good. Now, if in subsequent fitting, I determined that his hips are a little bit off, as they so frequently are. My right hip is higher than my left, and I haven't been paying attention. I haven't been aware of this long enough to see if a pattern is going to emerge, if people are more likely to have a high right hip or a left hip. So stay tuned. Maybe I'll learn that during the course of this series. Well, maybe not this particular series I'm making a kilt, but during the lifespan of my YouTube channel at least. Okay. Bring it over just a bit closer. And frankly, this is the only way to do it. If you're attaching straps and buckles, they have to be sewn what's called through and through. The needle and the thread has to, it absolutely must penetrate. Did I say penetrate? All the layers of cloth, because so often I see stuff that's just, they've just sewn it to the top layer of cloth. Don't waste our time with that nonsense. But yeah, so if in a later fitting, if that's the moment that I discover that one of his hips is higher than the other, I think it's on a finished kilt, it's the right hand buckle I think it's the easiest to adjust, because if you're going to adjust the left hand buckle, you'd also have to adjust the height, the location of the buttonhole, and that's going to get time consuming and messy. So this one's the easiest to do because you'd only have to open up this seam that I'm about to sew. And then move the buckle. You wouldn't have to. Oh yeah, that's right. If you moved the left hip, you'd not only be moving a strap and a buckle and the buttonhole, you'd also have to replace that centerpiece of the lining, because the hole in the lining, which had been sewn to the kilt for the buttonhole, would be then entirely in the wrong spot. So yeah, it looks like the adjustments for the asymmetrical, I know I'd say it right eventually. The asymmetrical, I said it wrong again. The asymmetrical hip, the adjustments will be made on the right side, whether it's raising or lowering. Okay, so there we are. That's rather a neat job. Okay, needle away, thread away. Okay, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish this session off by pinning up the front apron. I don't think I'm going to sew it today because it's just about quitting time. So there it is, brought to the edge. And again, this is the great thing about working with tartan, is the cloth acts like a bit like a grid square for you. So there we are. I'll base this later, but right now I'm just gonna pin it. So we're pinning it at the waist, pinning it Where's that hip measurement? Where were we? 3. Cool. Bang on. I love it when a plan comes together. Okay. There we are. So there's the waist and the hip. And good. Now here comes the fun part. a fun part. Turned it around so I'm looking at the kilt from the right way up. Or, yeah, bottom to top. And we saw how in the fitting, I put it on the client and saw how gravity dictated how the cloth was going to drape, and then moved it with my thumb, and while pinching it and rolling it, I stitched it down so I can see. We go for about the same width at the bottom. And pin that there. Now, this is the part where we get a bit creative and frankly a bit speculative, because I have the images, the pictures that I took of him when I was measuring him, because one of the factors is the degree of muscular development in the legs. So he doesn't have tremendously huge thighs, but he has some delineation. So remember, the measurement is perpendicular to the strap and buckle, and then tapered to the widest point of the hip. From here, I'm trying to explain something that I've been doing intuitively. I'm gonna, instead of a straight line, I'm gonna bring the cloth out, and I may have to explain this again in a later video, because I'm kind of explaining to myself what I've been just sort of intuiting my way through. So I'm bringing it out, rather than a straight line, I'm bringing the curve out early, shall we say, up here. And then from there, I'm bringing it back a bit. I have to admit, I'm being a bit cocky here, because those last 3 kilts that I made, I got it right the first time, 3 times in a row, with only one measuring, without even a fitting. And I've had a fitting here, but I think that's right. It's not always right to get it the first time or even the second time. I'm confident this is right, touch wood. But, you know, there's a chance I'll have cocked this up too. In fact, that's a little too wide there. I'm gonna bring that back just a hair. My decisions that I'm making here are based on a heck of a lot of experience. But don't be afraid, don't be discouraged rather, if you did this and then you tried it to the client and discovered that it wasn't quite right. And one of the things you would look for is, if the corner turns up like that, you got to go back and manipulate the cloth a bit. And I think the answer for that, if the cloth turns up like that, is you would have to do what I'm doing here, pulling more cloth out like so, increasing that. But frankly, the easiest way to tell is, this is laying here. It's sort of a gunpowder curve, and I'll mimic it over here where it's going like that, and then like so, rather like a cow horn. So hence a powder horn, straight out and then down. So when you put this on the client, you can see this curve. I hope you can see this curve, but when he's wearing it, because of the way it's tailored to the musculature of the thighs and seat, ideally that's going to look like it's a straight line, like a vertical line. Well, we're going to find that out, aren't we, when we get to the next fitting. Now it's 5:45. I think I'm going to take a break, and then tomorrow morning, bright and early, actually well before it gets bright and early, it'll still be dark outside when I get up, we'll sew this, and the blind stitch on the back, we'll baste it, and then we'll be ready to put the top band on. So there you go. I am going to break now because I have a date with some roast pork and some IPA. Cheers then.